Hello and welcome to our Chapter 9 Topic 2 video, and our focus today is going to be campaign finance. Alright, so how much does it cost to run for political office in the United States? I have a couple examples here. We'll look at this first slide. We'll go back to the election of 2008. Barack Obama and John McCain. You can see there that Barack Obama raised more than $730 million, and John McCain raised more than $300 million. The total spending by both candidates topped $1.76 billion, an amazing amount of money. All right. During the general election, John McCain made the decision to take what's called the public financing. The public financing is money that's put forth by American taxpayers to help subsidize the presidential nomination and general election nomination and general election campaigns. Right, Barack Obama decided to reject public financing and finance his campaign totally on his own. 2012, Barack Obama raised $541 million, Mitt Romney $336. Total spending $1.96 billion. So you see, just over the course of a 4-year period, you see an increase of spending on a presidential election. All right. You'll notice in the 2012 election, Mitt Romney rejected the public financing and financed his own campaign using his the Republican Party and his own election committee. And Barack Obama rejected public financing once again. All right, and he was the first incumbent president to do so. All right, so just to put this in perspective, we go back to 1846. When Lincoln was running for an office in Congress. You could see the quote here. Okay, he didn't really have need for money, traveled on his horse, going from house to house and field to field, different friends, staying overnight. And again, the only money that he really spent on his campaign was buying a barrel of cider. All right, for some farmhands who basically told him, hey, if you want my votes, why don't you buy us some cider. Quite a difference between 1846 and 2012. Why do we spend so much more money today? Why have campaigns changed? Why have they become more expensive? Some of these are going to be pretty easy answers for you. One of the big reasons is the fact that we've grown, the expansion of the people who are eligible to vote, or the electorate. When the 17th Amendment was passed in 1913, it allowed voters to go ahead and elect United States senators. They were no longer going to be picked by state legislatures. All right. At the same time, you see the transition there at the turn of the century away from party nominating conventions, basically where deals were going to be made behind the scenes, to direct primaries, where the elite party power was going to be eroded because it was going to be left up to the people to choose. All right. Then with the ratification of the 19th Amendment, women got the right to vote. So you have a huge voter pool. You could also add in there when the voting age was dropped, with the 26th Amendment, when the voting age was reduced to 18, you added another full dimension of voters. And then the other big concern here is the cost of the media. All right, it is very expensive to run television, advertising, the internet, building websites, creating enough capacity for those websites to operate. Very, very, very expensive. So it's a combination of more people to reach and increased costs of advertising and technology. All right. Again, why do we spend so much on political campaigns? You can see here the political cartoon in front of you, how Washington works, and you can see our election cycle. All right. So basically, it's a continual process. Start raising money, raise more money, and after 2 years, start raising more money again. That's what it boils down to. All right. 231 million voting age citizens. Basically, $7.62 per person is spent. 213 voting eligible citizens. That raises the amount spent per person to $8.67. 172 registered voters. That comes out to $10.23 per person. 131 people actually turning out to vote costs $13.43 cents, $13.43 per person. That was what was spent on the 2012 election. Okay. Where does all the money come from? Well, when we talk about public financing, and again, this is only for the presidential race, back in the 1970s with the FECA actions limiting some campaign finance, the first real campaign finance laws, one of the things they came up with in an effort to level the playing field was the public option, basically creating a pool of public money that could be used by the candidates to campaign, removing, or theoretically removing, them from having to go out and get money from corporations, foreign countries. It could be all done in-house, and it would be equal. This is mainly supported by a check-off or a checkbox on a tax return. Basically, you check the little box, yes or no, if you want to donate $3 from your federal taxes to go to the election campaign fund. Today, only about 11% of taxpayers actually check the box. And again, that's down from almost 30% of voters 20 years ago. So you can see here, as presidential candidates move away from using the public financing, it becomes less and less popular with individual citizens. All right. Spoke about this earlier. Obama rejected public financing for his campaign. Okay. Now, what's interesting is he's the first major party candidate to drop or opt out of the system, and he actually criticized the system prior to the explosion in support for President Obama through the internet and through a lot of his grassroots work. All right. All right, so where does all the money go? We talked a little bit about on some of the reasons why it's so expensive. Let's take a look at a campaign. In 2004, Howard Dean raised $41.7 million in an attempt to win the Democratic nomination. Let's take a look at where the money went. $7 million on advertising, $7 million on his staff, $5 million on direct mail, $2 million traveling, $2 million on technology, $2,772 for Louisville Slugger Museum for personalized Dean for America bats, $3,000 for Cowboys given out at just one event, $6,000 for a single visit to Lake Champlain Chocolates, $300,000 for fleece jackets, hats, t-shirts with the Dean for America logo. So you can see here, it's expensive to run a campaign, and there are a lot of kind of interesting things that campaigns purchase. All right, so where does all the money come from? The second answer, private donations. Private donations are the donations that are going to come from individuals like you and I, and political action committees. All right, political action committees are the money managing or the money collecting action or body of an interest group, a labor union, or other organization. PACs were created to help regulate campaign finances. It was another result of the FECA laws that were passed in the early 1970s. We'll get to those soon. Okay, another little political cartoon here for you to take a peek at. Does money buy elections? And you guys can take a look at that slide. And it's actually Hillary and Barack Obama, and it references the huge amount of money that was raised by both of those Democratic candidates into 2008. All right, so how do we control this system? Okay, how do we control campaign finance? How do we control money flowing into these campaigns? How do we regulate it? Well, there's a couple different ways. All right, we can control this system by disclosure laws, forcing people to basically go public with the amount, people and organizations go public with the amount of money that they donate. Laws or limits on public financing, limits on how much a person or a group can contribute, and how much a candidate can spend in a particular election. Those are some ideas on how we will control the system. All right, I spoke about the 1974 FECA amendments or laws that were passed. These were the first real influential campaign finance laws to make an appearance here in the United States. Well, now, through the years, there were various attempts at trying to limit finances and take some of the special interest out, going all the way back before the turn of the 20th century. Not a lot of that was very successful, and it was circumvented, and you'll see the same thing with a lot of the modern limitations. But the FECA was the first that imposed contribution limits, limiting individuals to $1,000 per candidate. It also imposed expenditure limits, okay, including an individual up to $1,000, like how much you could personally spend on your own campaign. It required disclosure and reports to be filed by all of those collecting contributions or spending money. It created that public financing system that we talked about earlier for the presidential elections, and it created the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, which is the body that oversees all of the campaign finance and how these campaigns are run. Okay? Now, that FECA law was challenged in 1976 in a case called Buckley versus Vallejo. The court upheld the constitutionality of parts of the new election law, And it did uphold limitations on contributions to candidates for federal office. So you are, even today, still limited as an individual how much you can give to a particular candidate. The optional public funding of presidential elections, that was approved. Reporting and disclosure requirements. You still, again, if you give to a candidate, it is public knowledge. And they also said creating the FEC was fine. Okay? They did declare that a couple provisions of the FECA law was unconstitutional and basically had to go. The big one was the fact that if you are a candidate, okay, you can spend as much money as you want. Okay? You can spend as much money as you want of your own cash. There are no limits to how much you can spend on your campaign. Okay? Now, the only time that was going to be limited is when someone entered into the public financing program, and we're talking about just presidential elections at this point. All right. That's a good place to stop. We've talked a little bit about how expensive campaigns are, and we've looked at the first true campaign laws of the modern era with the FEC laws. We'll carry on with part 2 of topic 2 with your next homework assignment. Thanks.